Okay, hi guys, welcome back to part 3 of When the Moon Hatched reading vlog, where I'm recapping the entire book, as best I can. It's going to be with spoilers, so if you haven't already seen the first 2 videos, stop what you're doing, go watch parts 1 and 2. I will link those videos in the description box below. And for the rest of you, let's go ahead and get into it. So starting at the beginning of chapter 50, where Rave has woken up, she's in Dom. Vea has stormed off, and now Rave's kind of like checking out her space. She's taking clothes out of the closet, and she's gathering supplies. Her plan is to get out of there as soon as possible and get back on track to go after the bounty hunter, to go after Rek for revenge. And, it's a funny moment because she's taking out clothes and putting on shoes, and she's like, oh, how cute, and these fit me, and, how perfect, and not knowing that those were hers at some point in time. And as she's gathering supplies, she runs into Pyrock. He offers to escort her into the city. She's like, do you have a curly quill? Which is the same store that she used to shop for supplies at in the Fade. And he's like, yeah, we do. And she's like, really? He's like, really? And she goes into the store to get supplies. I think Pyrock is waiting outside. And so he doesn't necessarily witness this exchange. But the shopkeeper is this kind of old looking man who has those milky white eyes like the soul that we met in the clan earlier. And he is a mind weft, it turns out. He can read her mind. He knows exactly why she's there and what she needs. And not only that, but he can see into her past because he can see into her mind, everything that's in her mind, including her past. And so he goes, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry about Essie. The pain of regret is really hard to deal with. And I'm so sorry about your loss of Knee. I know that was really hard to activate her and send her back. He's like, oh my, you've lost something so special. He says the answer is in the place where you bury all of those things down below. He's essentially referencing the lake that she has where the other is hidden below, deep down inside of her. And he says, I could help you drain it. Again, kind of referencing that lake. And she's like, stop. Okay, no, stop. I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to hear anything else. I just want my supplies and I want to get out of here. He's like, okay. She ends up picking up a journal while she's there. He offers her a bag because he says, rain is coming and I don't want your journal to get damaged. And she's like, rain isn't coming. And he's like, yes, she is. You would hear her if you didn't have that iron cuff on and if you bothered to listen. So it sounds like she's not very good at listening to the gods, which isn't really surprising about Rave, it tracks. He also makes a comment that rain is a power that no one is powerful enough to wield. It sounds like rain is not an elemental song that is very common, that is not a power that people can wield, but it's kind of ominous, but you can, that Rave can. So then we flash back to the diary, and she's talking about how Khan and Vea found her, and now Vea is washing her up, taking off her clothes and giving her a bath. And Rave is very ashamed. And Vea's like, hey, bodies are just these wonderful things that help us to live and to do all of these things. And it's nothing to be ashamed of or whatever. And then they kind of bond. And at the end, she says, I teach fighting classes. Do you want to learn how to fight in combat? And Eloin's like, I do. So she agrees to take fighting classes from Vea. And now we're back at chapter 53, again from Rave's point of view. She and Pyrock are hanging out. Rave has gotten some supplies. She's trying to knock the pin out of the iron cuff that she's wearing so that she can get rid of the shackle. And she's got a rock and she's trying, but she keeps missing. It's not working. She's struggling. And she notices that they're by this hushling ground. There's lots of warning signs. She sees that nearby is a bunch of young dragons that are jumping off of the hills, learning how to fly, that have saddles on their back. She's kind of just thinking about the fact that they're doing this to the dragons and kind of feeling bad for them. And she mentions that, the saber sides can't go south because it's too cold for them. The moon plumes we know can't go north. It's too hot for them. They'll burn. And so it appears that the Molten Maws are the only dragons that are able to cross both borders without risking their lives. And so Rave is like, okay, so that means I need a Molten Maw in order to get out of here and move on with my plan. She can't get the cuff off, and she gives up, and she and Pyrock end up at a bar, and they're chitty-chatting, and Khan walks in unexpectedly. he ends up removing the cuff for her, like right away. He like holds her hand down and gets the cuff off. She's like, why are you taking my cuff off? And he's like, I'm pretty certain at this point you're not going to kill me. And she's like, well, it depends. Are you complicit in what your brothers are doing? Did you know that Caddock takes children at the age of 9 away from their parents and basically brainwashes them into his military? And did you know that gnolls are held down against their will and clipped so they can be marked that they don't hear the elemental songs? And that they're forced to live in the Undercity where the living conditions are very poor and they have a high chance of being killed by a dragon? He's like, no, like, of course I don't. I'm not complicit in that, you know? She's like, well, then are you going to stop them? And he's like, I'm working on it, but we can't just go to war, because if we go to war, there will be many innocent fae that die, and there will be many innocent dragons that die. And it's clear that he cares a lot about the well-being of the regular people, the regular fae, and the creatures of the kingdom. But he also makes it clear that when he's ready, he will not be showing his brothers any mercy. Like that both of his brothers are going to deserve what they get. At the end of their discussion, she's like, oh man, this guy has a really big heart. He's actually a really good person. And I really don't want to kill him anymore. And so she tells him, I'm not going to kill you, but I'm getting out of here. And she tries to give him the Malmer back, the one that he had given her at the trials. And he's kind of like, why are you giving this back to me? I don't want this. I gave that to you. And she's like, because I can't give you what you want, what this stands for. Basically, like, I can't be with you. I can't have children with you. I can't live a life with you. And that's what this Malmer stands for. You can tell that he's really heartbroken over the fact that she's returning the Malmer to him. But in Rave's head, we can see that in her thoughts, she's like, I'm a liability. Everyone I've ever loved, everyone I've ever been involved with has died, and I don't want you to die. Like, you don't deserve to die, and you don't deserve kind of like the curse that comes with being with me or knowing me or being in my circle. So in a way, she feels like she's trying to protect him. Like, she doesn't think that anyone should be with her. Now we're into chapters 54 and 55. We're still in Rave's point of view, and the rain is now coming. And she can feel it because Khan has removed that cuff. And suddenly there's drops coming from the sky, but suddenly Rave feels like a lot of pain. She feels a lot of hurt, and she just starts crying. And she feels this sorrow that's like out of her control. And Khan says, I once knew a girl who cried when it rained. You know, he's referring to Eowyn and trying to remind her of who she is. And then he says, that cuff was a mercy. Like, I wasn't trying to bind you. It was a mercy because I knew that without the cuff, you'd be bombarded by all of the gods. I knew that rain would make you feel pain, right? So she's really, really upset. Can't control the hurt and the pain that she's feeling. And Khan, she's like, distract me, like make me think about something else or whatever. So he pulls her really closely and he hums a tune into her ear. So she recognizes this tune and it's very calming to her. It's soothing. It helps her deal with all of the overwhelming feelings she's getting from rain. After that, he takes her to his like special suite, his special little dwelling where he goes to be alone and where he goes to work on his moon shard project, right? So he decides to take her. They have to like go down a tunnel and she's like, this is a terrible idea. Like, is he just going to murder me? Like, what am I even, like, why am I following this man into this dark tunnel, deep into the mountain, into a cavern? Like, these kind of stories never end well, right? But they get to the end of the tunnel and they get into the cavern and Khan has pieced together Slotra. So he's found all the moon shards over time and put them together to rebuild Slotra as a moon. He says, but there's still one piece missing. You can see right here where it's like she was cradling someone or something. And I'm looking for that piece. And Rave is starting to remember, like, seeing all of these moon shard pieces put back together is triggering something in her. And she's having flashbacks of Slotra, of the dragon, like nuzzling her and blowing in her face and keeping her warm and cradling her. And she's starting to get really overwhelmed by these memories. He's like, do you recognize her? Like, do you recognize any of this? And she's like, no, because, you know, Rave, she just wants to shut it all down. And he's like, I think you're lying. I think that Slatra breathed life into you for 100 phases. And Rave is getting really overwhelmed. She's like, stop. Like, you've got to get over this. Like, I am not this person who you think I am. And she mentions that like her other, the place where her other is, it's starting to rise to the surface. And she feels like it's going to break through. And she's just trying to shut everything down. And Khan's just like, please don't lie to me. Like, lie to everyone else, but don't lie to me. And Rave's like, I just can't risk this. There's just too much. I can't let all of these feelings in. I can't believe that this was me or my life. I can't be involved with you. Like, it's just, there's too much to lose if I do that. And I'm never going to do that again. So I would rather just be lonely than have to suffer through great losses again. So on to 56. Khan is like, okay, obviously, like, I've taken things too far. This isn't working for her. And she's like, I just need to get out of here. And he says, you know, he loves her. So he gives her dragon blood, which is essentially currency. And he says, here you go. Good luck with everything. So in chapter 56, in my book, it's page 464. He says, chase death, Elowen Rave. And she kind of gasps. And she's like, Elowen Rave? Why is he calling me Elowen Rave? And he says, spend your life alone, forever wondering why you scream in your sleep, calling for that very moon plume I spent the past 23 phases piecing back together, hoping it would bring your spirit peace. All because you loved that beast so fucking much. I knew it would break you to know she was scattered all over the world after scavengers raided her impact zone. Chase death, Moonbeam. And I pray your bloodlust brings you the same sense of peace I feel just knowing you exist. And then he plants a kiss on her temple and he lets her go. And Rave is kind of left thinking, okay, this is what I want. But also she's like, Elowen Rave, like, is that my last name? And at this point, she kind of understands that there is another life that she lived and that Khan knows her. But she's not willing to go back to it. She just wants to start over, have a new life, and she doesn't want to dig that life up. But she's curious. She's like, she wants to ask him. She ends up not asking him, but her interest is piqued. We see that she's curious, and she's now feeling kind of torn on her decision about whether she wants to just escape and go get revenge, or if she wants to discover who she was. So now we flash back to a diary entry where Elowen says she came back to the hutch one day and it was locked and she couldn't get in, and Khan was sitting there with soup, and he basically like spoon-fed her soup and made her eat, and it was kind of like it was too strong for her. And so after she ate, he let her back into the hutch. But the next day he came back with a soup that was like a little more mild, not so strong. And again, the hutch was locked and he made her eat again before he would let her in. And he does this every day for weeks. And she says, I'm getting stronger. And sometimes they don't even speak, but he just comes, he makes her eat, he plays his music, he plays his instrument. And then once she's eaten, she's earned the key to get back into the hutch. And he's just basically trying to rehab her and get her stronger, right? She says that now she knows that this is Khan Vagar and that he is the eldest son of Ostern Vagar. And he's really got her attention at this point. Okay, so now chapter 58 is from Vea's point of view. Vea, she wants to go to Erythia to find Elowen's diary. Vea is very impulsive. And so even though she should take some time to plan this out because she's going to sneak into a kingdom where her brother rules, who will kill her if he finds her, she's going to try to steal this diary back and unlock all of these secrets. But instead, she's just really impulsive and she just basically takes off and goes for it. We're inside her head, and so we're learning a lot about her past. And she's talking about how there's a burrow that used to be Drago's, and Drago's up in the sky now. And Drago was her mother's dragon, and she rehabbed him after he was like kicked out of a nest. And he meant a lot to her ma. And when her ma died, Drago got so depressed. And usually saber sides like to go into a different burrow, like a different hutch every night. They don't usually go back to the same one. And so in their city, they try to keep all of these burrows open to try to keep all these dragons satisfied so that they can kind of burrow hutch, for lack of a better term. But Drago refused to leave the burrow where her mom kept him. This is very unusual. At some point, he gets a tear in his wing, and Con is trying to fix the dragon's wing. And now, remember, they're kids. Vea is 5 years old at this point, or 5 phases old, okay? And after Con fixes Drogo's wing, Drogo kind of huffs at Vea and then flies off into the sky and hardens and dies. And so Vea witnesses the death of Drogo, her mother's dragon, which was like the only real connection she had to her because she died at her birth. And for the rest of her life, she has blamed herself not only for her mother's death, but also for Drogo's death, because the rest of the family also was upset that Drogo died. And so she believes, well, I killed my mother, and now Drogo died because he misses my mother so badly that it broke him. So now both of their deaths are my fault. While she's getting ready to go, she runs into Con, and Con's also getting ready to go. And she's like, where are you going? He's like, I have to take care of this rabid dragon that's out there, and I need to give Rave some space. He's like, where are you going? And she's like, I'm going to Erythia. And he's like, no, you're not. And she's like, yes, I am. I have to do this. I need answers. I'm going to do this. And you cannot do it because our brothers would recognize you. But I can sneak in. They won't recognize me, and I will be stealth. It's going to be okay. You know, Con's like, I'll be back in time for the Great Flirt, which is like quite a ways away. And she's like, you're going to be gone for 30 Aurora cycles? Like, that's a long time. I saw you take Rave to your suite, which is where the moon shards were all put back together, right? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, I thought you said you were going to ease her into this slowly. And he's like, I did say that. And she's like, but then you didn't. And he's like, but then I didn't. And she's like, I take it that she didn't take that very well. And he's like, no. And she's like, so that's why you're leaving for 30 Aurora cycles and chasing this rabid dragon and trying to get out of here. Like, that didn't go well, and you're not handling it well, and now you just need to get away so that you don't smother her. Con tells her, it didn't go well. I gave her a bag of dragonstone, and I told her she's free to do whatever she wants. And she's like, why did you do that? Like, she's just going to cross the border and she's going to be gone. And if our brothers find out, if our brothers find her and they figure out who she is, they have this tool, and you know what will happen, and they will kill us, and they will come after all of the untapped dragon's blood that is in our kingdom. And Con's like, I know, but she didn't head for the border. She headed for the West Point, which is where that Hushling land was blocked off earlier when she was with Pyrock. It's, as we find out, the place where he built a little dwelling for her. And so Vea's like, no way, she's still in there. And he's like, somewhere in there. Eowyn is somewhere deep down in Rave because she's being drawn back to this dwelling, like this place where she used to live and spend all of her time. So now in 59, we are back in Rave's point of view, and she's exploring this Hushling's den. And she's like, I know that these signs and these runes would never keep a Hushling out of here. So I know this is all just a ruse and that it's to hide something, because it's not a Hushling's den. She's decided she's going to go figure out what it is that they're hiding from her before she goes for the border and goes after Wreck. She's kind of just being led by her heart, by her intuition. And she, you know, is hidden. She's going through these vines and she's like feeling along a rock wall. She finally finds this kind of like door with a knob. And when she grabs onto it, it breaks off, and it's a Malmer that matches the one that Con had given her. So she's like, wow, what is this? Like, and how come this looks just like the Malmer? So she pockets the Malmer and she continues going in, and she can hear Claude giggling, like Claude is kind of pushing her along and kind of blowing things out of the way and showing her the way. She finally makes her way into this dwelling, and it's abandoned, but it was a home at one point. You know, she's finding all of these relics of this couple that used to live there. And she's like, there was a couple that lived here and they loved each other. She finds their bed, and every time she goes into a new space, she's kind of having these like flashbacks to her life in that dwelling. And she's really starting to recognize and accept that she's Eowyn and that she used to live there. This used to be her life, and she was with Con, and she loves Con. And so that chapter ends with her saying, this isn't just some home of a couple in love. These are relics of our love, like me and Con. And so she's finally just starting to accept that. And then there's a really quick diary entry from Eowyn. It's pretty short, but She's crying. She's in pain. She's lost her family. She's lost Slatra. She's lost Alum. She is going to be married off to Tyroth. Like, she's just so devastated from everything that she's been through. She just can't stop crying. And Khan is playing music for her and trying to soothe her. Presumably, it's the same tune that he kind of sang into her ear, into Rave's ear when rain was coming. After a while, he just stops playing and he scoops her up and carries her in and takes care of her and just, lets her cry and helps her to feel better. Okay, so now we are in chapter 61. I'm going to continue and I'll be back with more. We're getting a lot closer to the release of Ballad and I'm so excited. And just more and more every time I'm reading a page, it's getting me so excited for what's going to happen in the Ballad. So anyways, all right, I'll be back. I'm going to start at 61 and we'll talk soon.